some market or industry. And within that industry, there are companies that compete with one another. For example, let's say Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is in the soft beverage industry. And the soft beverage industry is dominated by Coca-Cola. And then who's their biggest competitor? Pepsi. Pepsi is between Pepsi and Coca-Cola. Those are the two companies. Those two companies really dominate the entire industry. They make up about 80% of all the sales in soft beverages are with those two companies. So what that means is that would be a market structure that's dominated by a couple big companies. And if you look up here and say, well, what market structure has a couple big companies? And say, all right, well, oligopolies. Oligopolies is the market structure where we have a couple big companies that dominate the whole industry. And then you can kind of go through the rest of the characteristics. And so let's say that the characteristic is it says for product standardization, there's certain characteristics. It could be either a homogeneous product, which means it's the same, or it's a differentiated product, which means it has some sort of little difference or big difference between the two products, between the two goods, between Coke and Pepsi. Are they homogeneous or are they differentiated? So which one are they? You think they're pretty much the same, okay? How many people think that there's a difference between Coke, big difference between Coke and Pepsi? Okay, so which one do you like?
It's not a big difference, but it's definitely Coke and Pepsi.
You like Coke better?
Yeah.
Which one do you like better?
Coke, yeah. Coke.
Coke.
If you're gonna drink.
Coke. Wow, we got like, there's people at heart stuff, Spanish, like, I'm not going with Pepsi. But no, we have a Pepsi. So there's a difference, and the difference might be like it's sweeter, or I think Pepsi's a little sweeter. I think Coke's a little bit more bubbly, and that's kind of what I think is the difference. But I personally, if they said we only have Pepsi and not Coke, I wouldn't like throw something at the waiter or waitress and say, bring me my Coke. So it doesn't mean that big a difference between it for me. But differentiated product would be the difference between two goods that are that are slight differences, like for instance, shampoo. Right? Do you guys think that all shampoo is the same? So what's the difference between a shampoo A and shampoo B? What do you think the difference is? Okay, so the ingredients, and what does it do that the ingredients really show up to you? How does it? It smells like nicer. Like we start buying this mint shampoo thing. It's like the coolest thing. It's like, but it's because it makes my hair look much more full in the back, as you guys can tell. That helps, right? So that's right. For me, I'm with you. I think shampoos have a chemical difference that would be differentiated, and they can sell their product based on the differentiation. Okay, so those are the extremes there. So what we're going to do is just going to briefly go down this list and kind of give you an idea of characteristics, and then we'll briefly look at this and give you an idea of the different market structures. And I won't go too long on this, because as soon as I say, as soon as we get done with I'm going to do that, then we're going to cover perfect competition. And when we cover perfect competition, I'm going to go over these characteristics again. And then when we cover monopolies, I'm going to go over those characteristics. So this is just an introduction to the market structures. Okay, so the first one is the number of sellers. And by number of sellers, I mean number of sellers that are competing with one another. So for instance, if I said we're looking at the industry for gas stations, how many sellers of gas stations are there? Well, a lot, right? There's, probably thousands and thousands of gas stations in the country. But how many compete with one another? When you live in Rock Hill, is a gas station in Rock Hill competing with a gas station in Spartanburg? Are you going to drive to Spartanburg to get cheaper gas? And even if it was like 10 cents cheaper per gallon, would you do it? No. And one, you probably don't even know about it. But two, it wouldn't make sense. It's not rational. So they're not competing with one another. So when we look at competitors, we're saying how many are you competing with? So if I'm the gas station on Celanese, right by 77, who am I competing with? I'm competing with the gas station that's right across the street from me, the one that's right across the street from them, and they're right, because there's like 4 corners of gas stations. Those are my competition. Am I competing with the one that's, over, off Furlong Street? No, not really, because people aren't gonna go off the highway and say, I'm gonna drive all the way over to Furlong and buy gas, right? So that's what I mean by number of sellers. Who are you competing with? Some companies compete nationally, where they're competing with just like, for instance, let's say Lexus. All right, if you want a Lexus dealership, is there one in Rock Hill?
No.
Why not? First of all, why not? Why do you think we don't have a Lexus dealership?
Socioeconomic.
Yeah, it's about because we don't have the income to support it. Okay, that's based bottom line. As you look at our income levels in Rock Hill, that's not enough people to make that level of income. So if you're a Lexus dealer in Charlotte, you're competing with the Lexus dealer probably in Concord, and the Lexus dealer in maybe Columbia, or the Lexus dealer. So it's not. So you could be regionally competitive. Okay. If you're the paper producer over here in your Bowater, then who are you competing with? Well, you're not. There's no other paper plants in Rock Hill, so you're not competing with them. You're competing regionally with the paper plant in Savannah, and the paper plant in Charleston, and the paper plant in Hampton, Virginia, and all these other places where there's paper plants. And how do you know you're near a paper plant?
Smell.
It smells. Right. So if you're ever wondering where they are, just go, oh, you must be near a paper plant. Depends on who you're driving with, but when the car starts to smell a little bit, no, I'm kidding. Right, but it's a joke. That was funny. All right, but okay, so you blame the paper plant. Okay, so that would be the number of sellers going across. There's a lot of sellers with perfect competition. With monopolistic competition, there are a pretty good amount of sellers. Okay, and when it goes, if we go this way, there's less sellers. When we get to monopoly, and you say something like, I'm looking to get natural gas, for my house, then there's only one place to get it around here. You got to go through whatever the natural gas price is. Or if I'm looking to get electricity, there's only one place to get it around here. There's only one seller. Okay, so that would be a monopoly. Okay, going to the next one. Product standardization means the type of product it is. Homogeneous would be that it is the same product, not different at all. So I'm looking to get the newest. What's the newest movie that's being released now on video? Anything popular out? There's like a new Hunger Games one, right? That's out on video now. So, or with
Insurgent.
Insert. Well, that's at the theater, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But the one that's like in the video, like the red box. Like Mockingjay. Okay. If you're to buy a Mockingjay and you're looking to buy it for your home collection, then what you could do is you could go and buy it at Best Buy, or Target, or a variety of other places, Walmart. What are you looking for when you buy that? If you're going to buy it, what's the manufacturer determinant of whether you buy it or not? The price. Because it's a homogeneous product, right? It's not like if you bought it at Best Buy for $2 more, it would have a better ending. It's the same movie. It's the same exact product. So it doesn't matter to you where you buy it. Same thing might be true with milk, right? You don't care where you buy it. It's pretty much milk is milk, right? Chicken, I think, is chicken for the most part. So probably some differences. Or hamburger. So those are products that are basically the same no matter where you buy it. So you tend to buy it based on the price. Okay, so that's called homogeneous. Differentiated, we just went over an example of it, but the same thing can be true about hamburgers. If I buy a hamburger at Hardee's, is it the same hamburger that I would buy at McDonald's? Is it the same hamburger I buy at Wendy's? Or the same hamburger I would buy at Burger King? And they all differentiate their product in different ways. So you see, that's how they try to sell what they're producing. So McDonald's does it by putting special sauce on it, and whatever, and the Whopper is their special thing at Burger King, and they all have their little niche that they're trying to get you to buy their differentiated product. And this is where advertising comes in, is how you differentiate. We'll hit that when we hit that next topic of monopolistic competition, right? homogeneous differentiated. It doesn't matter in this market of oligopolies. The product can be basically the same or they can be differentiated. And we'll get to that someday. Okay, no close substitutes means there's nothing else out there like it. Like electricity. What's the close substitute for electricity? What else would have turned on your hair dryer this morning? Okay, or there's nothing else, or the lights. You could have used candles, I suppose. But there's no close substitute for electricity. So that would be a product that we can purchase that there's nothing else like it. So you have no choice. If you want electricity, you go to the place that sells it. Okay, so that's the product standardization. Barriers to entry are probably one of the most important that we cover here. And the barriers to entry mean things or obstacles in the way of stopping a company from entering into the industry. So what stops you, for instance, from opening up your own restaurant? What would be, if you want to open up your own restaurant, you look around and go, wow, restaurants are doing really well now. Every time I go out, there's a line. So I want to open up my own restaurant. What would be a barrier to entry?
Regulations.
Okay, so yeah, so there would be some laws, some regulations. Okay, what else? Money. Money's a huge barrier to entry because you know how much it costs to open a restaurant? On average, about $250,000. Okay, how many of us have $250,000 lying around? So that's a barrier to entry. That would be a financial barrier. The first one mentioned is a legal barrier. So we have financial barriers to entry, we have legal barriers to entry. Okay, we also have barriers that are called like these ownership of scarce resources that are barriers. And we can go through each of these barriers and kind of go from story to story, right? Like here, there are a lot of barriers when we're looking at monopolies. The reason that Comporium still has their power in this area is because when they split up these cable companies, which they did a few years back, they grandfathered in any area that had 50,000 people or less was sort of protected. So if you were a little cable company and you operated in an area with 50,000 people or less, then competition was not allowed into your area. Well, what happened is that Rock Hill got bigger than 50,000, but Comporium still fights and keeps their grandfathered power. And it's but so now nobody can use those lines except Comporium. So if you want to compete with Comporium, you have to build your own lines, and like AT&T is doing now. Time Warner is coming in from where I live, like the Charlotte. They're coming in from that area that way, and they have to start all over again. So they can't even use the lines that Comporium has. That's a barrier to entry. It's a legal barrier. And that gives them the power. So that's what's meant by barrier to entry. And over here, there are no barriers. So I'll give you a quick story. All right, my brother's friend, his name is Cuffy, and Cuffy started a T-shirt business out of the back of his car. Okay, that's what I would say by no barrier to entry. Okay, anybody can open up a T-shirt business. You can just get find some T-shirts, get them cheap from someplace, and maybe put a print on them and sell them out of the back of your car. It was really very, very little expense. And what happened in Cuffy's example is that he became pretty good at this. And he he opened up his own store doing T-shirts. And then he got even bigger, and he went to Cape Cod, which is a big T-shirt buying place, because Cape Cod's it's an island off Massachusetts, and it's like yesterday. And it's a really hot touristy place. And last time I went to Cape Cod, I was on the beach, and I looked in a helicopter or whatever, a plane flew by, and it said, sale at Cuffy's, 3 T-shirts for $10. And it's like, oh my gosh, this guy. He ended up selling the business, his little T-shirt business, for millions of dollars. And that's what I would say is and it's an industry that anybody can jump into and anybody can be successful with. I'm not saying that he didn't have special talent. He's a very talented, creative guy, but he ended up doing really well on a business that had no barriers to entry. Okay, so if you want to open up your own little shop, you go downtown, it's $25, get your retail license, and do it. Do nails, do cut hair, whatever it is. There's no barriers to entry. But that's not that's not the same as if you wanted to, start making airplanes. Okay, it costs a little bit more money, like billions, to start in that industry. Price setting power, price setting power just means if I charge a higher price, will customers stay with me? So if I'm in a perfectly competitive market and I charge a higher price, for instance, if I'm on this street with the gas stations, and there's a gas station here, and there's a gas station here, and there's a gas station here, and there's a gas station here. What kind of price setting power do I have? Well, if they're charging $1.99, what should I charge? No, probably not, let's say $1.98. Let's go through this, and then what would you charge? Huh? You go $1.96, okay, and what would you charge? What would the next one charge? $1.90, okay. Now what's going to happen? Everybody's going to go to this one, right? But is this company necessarily making money? Not necessarily. So what's going to happen with them is everybody's going to go to them, so their supply will run low, so what will happen next? They'll probably end up raising their prices because or these people will lower the prices to join them. And eventually what will happen is something like this. When they all charge the same price. And if a new one moved in over here, they charge the same price too. So that means that there's very little price setting power. If they charge $2.15, what's going to happen? Nobody will go there. So that's what's meant by price setting power. That if there's no price setting power if the market is super competitive. How do I know it's super competitive? Because there's a lot of sellers and they're producing a homogeneous product, and then it's not hard to enter into the industry. Okay, so that would be price setting power. Where if I go to a Winthrop basketball game or something, I want to buy a Coke, right? Not Pepsi. Right? If I want to buy a Coke, then how much am I going to? How much are they going to charge me? Yeah, like $3 for a Coke, and like, is it really worth it? But they have price setting power, and there's nothing I can do about it. If you've gone to games, if you've gone to stadiums, and you want to buy a soda or water or something along those lines, then you're going to end up, because they have high price setting power in those situations. Okay, next one. Profit in the long run, this is economic profit. That's all I really need to say is this is economic profit. So it doesn't mean they're not making money, it just means they're making what they should make. They're making a rate of return that's a good rate of return. So remember when we did our examples, like if you were an accountant making an economic profit of 0, you'd probably be making about $7,000 a year. It doesn't mean you're not making anything, it just means you're making what you should make. So there's no long run economic profit in the long run, and then these guys can kind of hold on to their profit because of the high barriers to entry. Okay, government intervention, very little, basically none, very little, some, and then there's a lot. And then advertising, believe it or not, there's no advertising with perfect competition because there's no need to, right? You can sell as much as you want at the market price, and that's one of the assumptions. So I'll go over that in a couple minutes. And then there's a lot of advertising in these industries, and there's very little in monopolies. Okay, so your four, and then here's just an example, but your four basic market structures are right there. Okay, so now this is the guideline that I want you guys to kind of go back to whenever you're confused about what we're doing, and we get in the midst of these graphs and these cost curves and these marginal revenue things and curves and everything else. You go back to this, and this is kind of like your foundation. This is kind of the outline of where we are in this class for the rest of the semester. Okay? Anybody, any questions about that? All right, so what I'll probably do is I'm going to find a way somehow for Thursday to come up with some sort of quiz, sort of bonus thing and I might use some questions from there to do it, okay? I might also use some questions from the test to kind of see if we can maybe get some, maybe, but again, it'd probably be like a bonus or an extra calculator. All right, anything, so B, just so you would know that, and we might be quizzed on it. And I won't give you a quiz on perfect competition probably until next week, so I know we want, so this quiz that I give you, if I give you a quiz on Thursday, it'll just be more of a bonus quiz that we can use the answers, we can use them for our test or something. Okay, thanks. So let's move on. All right, so the market structure that we're going to look at first is called perfect competition. And perfect competition is a theoretical market structure. In other words, there really is no perfect anything, right? There's no perfect competition. But it's a market structure that gives you like this extreme, and just like monopolies is on the other side, and it gives you this extreme. So it's a really good way to look at, what could possibly happen if everything was, done the right way. Perfect competition is the ideal market structure for us consumers because we have lots of places where we can go to buy the product that we want, and the suppliers, the companies selling the goods, are competing for our business, and the way they compete is by lowering their prices. So we like perfect competition. Perfect competition is the ideal market structure for a capitalistic economy. And that's what we're in. So that's what we want. But there are a few assumptions that we need to know. So one of the assumptions, all right, is that the companies all charge the same price. Remember what we're most interested in is price and quantity, right? I mean, that's been our big thing all year. Is we look at every single company we look at, we're asking two questions. What price should they charge? What quantity should they produce? Well, in this case, the companies all charge the same price, and they get their price from the industry. So in that little example that I just gave you, that was an example of a company getting their price from the industry. You look and you say, I'm going to start, my price is going to be based on what everybody else is charging. So let's say you open up your own restaurant and you decide to put a chicken sandwich at a restaurant on your menu. How much are you going to charge for it? What price would you charge if you open up your own restaurant and you were selling chicken sandwiches? $5. Throw a number out. $3. Restaurant, okay, not fast food restaurant. Okay, $9. Okay. $6. Okay, keep throwing them out. You're doing great. $6.25. Good enough. What else? $8.37. Okay. Okay. I know it's not. Okay. All right. So nobody said like $50, and no, right? Because we already assume that there's sort of this range where there's this price setting hour range. So we're probably going to charge about what everybody else charges. And I have a friend who owned a restaurant, and this was, he was like 5 or 6 years ago when he owned it. So it's been a little while. But I remember him saying to me, it cost about $7 to get that food out to you, like it was a chicken sandwich. It cost me about $7 to get that plate out to you. And I asked him, I said, well, how do how do you make money off kids' meals? He said, we don't. We make money off drinks. We make money off of you know, when adults get, you know, entrees, but we lose money on kids. And so that inspired me to always buy kids' meals wherever I go. I wish I was big. But that gives you an idea that everybody charges the same price, probably because it's pretty similar in cost. That's probably one of the reasons. But it is, you know, it's a market gets the price. So you get your price from the industry, it kind of happens like that. And the more you shop around, you guys, the more you'll realize this is true. And if you're like me, where you shop around for everything, like I need new tires on my car, so I have to go shopping now for tires. I'm going on the internet, and I'm going to find out, you know, the lowest price I can get, and I'm going to check 10 different places, and by the time I'm done, I'm sure that I can get 10 companies that I go to charge me the same price. That's how competitive markets are now, and that's what I mean by everybody's going to charge what everybody else charges. And if they don't, then you just ask them why. They say, why, you know, why do you think you're, oh, because we have this tire. So no, I'm talking tire to tire, right? Same tire, same kind, same size, same everything, and you're going to see that prices are very similar across the industry. Maybe not exactly the same, but in perfect competition, they are the same. The second one is your companies can sell as much as they want at the market price. At the market price. So this here is the Q. That's the quantity. So our issue here is the quantity, our issue here is the price. So what we're looking at here is what inspires them to in this case, to charge what they charge, and the answer is, if you look at the industry, everybody's charging that. That's why we charge this amount, because everybody else is. And over here, the question of quantity is, well, how much are you going to, you know, how big is your company going to be? How, you know, what's the size of your gas station? What's the size of your nail salon? Or what's the size going to be that you're going to produce? What's the amount that you're going to produce? And the answer to that question is that they're going to produce. They're going to sell as much as they want so they're going to basically look at how much it costs them. They're going to try to operate where they cost them the least amount. So we have to look at cost to determine that. Can you guys see that, or is it too much of a glare? And you have a thing going on here. I don't know what to do about that. So bring sunglasses in for you, or sunscreen maybe. Right? Anyway, but you guys actually can see pretty well. I don't know if that helps. Okay, so now that we have those, let's go over the numbers, and just like the other teaching that we've done so far, right? When we did demand curve, I started with numbers, and I said, here's the numbers behind it, and we did a demand curve, and then from then on, it was just all we cared about was the line. We didn't really care about the numbers. We did cost curves, we did average cost curves, marginal cost curves. It was the same thing. Put the numbers in, and then we didn't really think about the numbers anymore. We just looked at the lines. Well, the same thing's true with perfect competition. I'm going to go through and give you some of the numbers, and then once we get the numbers, we're going to get the lines, and then we get the lines, then we won't worry about the numbers anymore. So numbers are just there to show you where the lines come from and what the market looks like. So we have Q, P, and then we're going to have introducing a new term here: total revenue, marginal revenue, total cost, marginal cost, and profit. So we'll go through this table here, and we're going to have numbers 0 through 9 here, and these are on my notes on the web page. You want to look at those, and then the total revenue, or the marginal revenue is, or price is 12. So before we get to the cost, which is going to be given to you, let's go through the first 4 columns. In this case, what happens is there's this assumption that the price is going to be the same no matter how much you produce. So we can make that a third assumption, or make it part of the first one, but the price doesn't change with output. So it doesn't matter how much they produce, the price is always going to be the same. So that means that the price is 12 there, it's going to be 12 here, the whole line down, the price is going to be 12. So what that looks like graphically is we have this price here on this axis, and then we have the quantity here on this axis, and the price is going to be equal to 12 when the quantity is 0, when quantity is 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 9, the price is always going to be 12. And we can keep going to 99, and the price will always be 12. So if the price is 0, the quantity 0, the price is 12. 1, 12, 2, 12. So we end up with this line that looks like that. So the point is that as the quantity goes up, there's no change in the price. So the price always is constant, and that means that this is our demand curve, because the demand curve is the relationship between the price and the quantity. That's all it is. So this is a completely horizontal demand curve, which means it's perfectly elastic. And the way that I would explain this from a perfect competition standpoint is this. If they charge a higher price, what will happen? People stop buying it. Right? Why? Because they don't have to buy it, because they can go across the street to the other gas station and get the product for a lower price. So if they raise your price, if you raise your price, nobody buys it from you. What about lowering your price? Well, they could run up, but more importantly here is this. They don't have to lower the price because there's an assumption that they can sell as much as they want at the market price. So they don't need to lower the price to $1.90 a gallon because they can sell as much as they want at the price that everybody else is charging. And that means that this is the perfect line, because below it, you don't need to go there, and above it, nobody will buy it. So you can't charge too high, and you don't have to charge too low. So this is your demand curve, which makes life real easy now. So we don't have this demand curve that's downward sloping. This is your demand curve. This would be for a company, otherwise known as a firm, in a perfectly competitive market. And so we don't have any cost curves in here, but this is going to be the demand curve for now. Okay, now the next thing is this. Right? Let's look at the total revenue. And total revenue is just your price, in this case, the price times the quantity. And before I go too much further, whenever you see a little q will represent the output for a company or firm, and a big Q represents the output for the entire industry. The difference is one is going to be, obviously the little q is going to be just for one company, and the big Q is for all the companies added up, the sum of all companies. And total revenue is just P times Q, so this is your multiplication 12 table, so 12 and 24 and 36 and 48 and 60 and 72, all the way down, okay? So that is, that's pretty standard. We don't really do a total revenue line because it doesn't matter. So, but what does matter is this new term, and this new term is called marginal revenue. So MR is known as marginal revenue. And the definition of marginal revenue is it's your change in total revenue over your change in quantity. It's the additional revenue that a company makes by selling one more unit. That's the definition, okay? So it's going to be the additional revenue that the company makes when they sell one more unit of the good. So in this case, it's going to just be the change in total revenue over the change in Q. So how much does total revenue change when Q changes by 1? So the answer would be 12. And then how about from 12 to 24, what's your change in revenue? 12. And then from 24 to 36? 12. And 12, right? We can keep going, 12. The difference between these two is always 12. So every time we sell one more unit, we bring in $12. That's not going to be true when we do other market structures, but in perfect competition, they can keep the price the same and keep getting the same amount of business. That's part of that assumption. So now, what if we were to graph Q and marginal revenue? In other words, let's put marginal revenue up here on this line. We already have Q on this line. Then let's take a look and let's graph these. So at 1, when our quantity is 1, our marginal revenue is 12. When our quantity is 2, our marginal revenue is 12. When our quantity is 3, our marginal revenue is 12, etc., right? So it keeps moving along. So no matter what our quantity is, our marginal revenue is 12. So what's our marginal revenue line look like? Huh? Same thing. The marginal revenue and your demand curve, margins are the same thing. So far, nothing too complicated, right? We really haven't had to worry too much about anything new. It's just all about just like I said, just the starting point of just getting the demand side. So that concludes the demand side. That's the new part for perfect competition. The older part, or the other part, is what happens with the cost side. The supply side is the cost side. And we need some numbers to throw in here, but we're going to say 17 and 26, 34, 40, 44, 52, 62, 74, 90, and 120. So in this line, this information is given to you. What would be the fixed cost in this case? 17, right? Because when the quantity is 0, the company still has a cost of 17. So given this information, we can figure out fixed costs, variable costs, all of our costs, right? We can do average cost. I'm not asking you to do that right now. All we're going to do is marginal cost. So marginal cost is just the change from here to here. So how much does the marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in Q. So when total cost change goes from 17 to 26, Q goes from 0 to 1, so it's going to be 9. Right? So 9. So the first one would be 9. The second one would be, 9. And what's the next one? From 26 to 34? 8. And the next one? 6. And the next one? 4. Next one? 8. And 10. And 12. And 16. And 30. And so now we have the profit, and then we'll do one more line after that, and we'll be pretty much done. Okay, but erase this. And it's going to be the change in profit. So one of the most important terms or concepts you're going to hear about for the rest of the semester is this relationship between marginal revenue and marginal cost. Okay, anybody who does principles of micro, it gets beaten to their head of this relationship between marginal revenue and marginal cost. Marginal revenue is the additional revenue for selling one more unit. And marginal cost is the additional cost of selling one more unit. So what you want to happen is you want your revenue to be greater than your cost. You want more money coming in. This is money coming in. And this is money going out. So if I decide I'm going to sell, you know, this little podium thing, right? And I say, all right, well, here's my podium, and I'm gonna say, all right, I'm gonna sell this thing for $10. That would be, if somebody gave me $10, then this would be, the revenue that I would get for this would be $10. That would be my marginal revenue. What about the other part of this? What's the other part that I'm looking for? Okay, my marginal revenue is one part. What's the other part?
How much it costs you to...
How much it costs me to make this thing. So how much does it cost me to get this to you? And that would be the marginal cost. And then, if I know how much revenue I'm going to get in from selling this, and how much it costs me to make it, then this is the most important thing in all of economics, is to determine whether or not we should make an exchange. So I need to know if it's worth it for me as a business to sell this thing. And you gotta check, test businesses to see how much their revenue is and their costs are. Or we know the revenue because that's the price. But if you want to test the cost, you can look at the price, see how much they're charging, and figure that the cost is somewhere below that. Okay? They typically don't lose money. So let's look at that decision. So in this case, the marginal revenue is 12 and the marginal cost is 9. So if they sell this first unit, they're going to bring in $12 and it costs them $9 to make it. So what is their additional or change in profit of selling this one unit? $3. They go up by $3. So in that case, because they're making profit, there will be an exchange. There will be an exchange. And as long as the company's making profit, then there should be an exchange between the buyer and the seller. If the profit's not there, then there should be an exchange. So let's look at the total profit. The total profit is just the total revenue minus the total cost. So at the beginning, they were not making any revenue and their costs were 17. So at the beginning, they were losing $17. Okay, that was the beginning. Then they decide they're going to sell one unit. And now their revenue is 12 and their cost is 26. So what would be their profit? It would be 12 minus 26, which is negative 14. Right? But how much did profit change by going from here to here? Profit went up by 3. So it went up by 3, which is exactly what we said the difference between the marginal revenue and the marginal cost is. All right, so let's do another one. Should they make the exchange? Should they sell the second unit? And go one by one. If they sell this unit, they're going to bring in $12. And it costs them $8. So how much extra money will they make by selling this unit? They'll make $4. All right. What happens to their profit? They go from 24 to 34. Right. So what their profit is now negative 10. See, so the profit is rising, and we're getting closer and closer to zero, to positive numbers, which is what we want. So the additional revenue is the difference between the marginal revenue and the marginal cost. So the MR minus MC gives you the additional profit. And you see that these two are connected. And they'll just do another one. So on this third unit, should they make an exchange? Yes or no? Should they make the exchange on the third unit and should the company sell that third unit? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and why?
Plus.
How much revenue are they bringing in?
Plus 6.
Okay, plus 6. They're selling it for 12. Their costs are 6, so they make an extra $6. And now look at their overall profit is now 36 minus 40, so that's a minus 4. So they're getting closer to breaking even. Remember, this is going to be economic profit. So 0 is not such a bad thing. 0 means you're making what you should be making. Let's do another one. they're gonna now this next unit, the marginal revenue is 12, and the marginal cost is 4, so they bring in $8. Now they're plus 4, and now they're on the right track. Okay, so I can keep going on and on with this, and you'll see that what's gonna happen is we're gonna maximize our revenue, and that will end up, you know, that will be the kind of the closing point. Let me just do the last one and show you what I'm talking about. What happens on this 9th unit? Should they sell the 9th unit? Well, the marginal revenue is 12, the marginal cost is 30. So should they sell it? They're going to lose $18 if they sell that. So we know they're not going to do that. So our job next time, what we're going to do is we're going to grab it and show you the short run and long run, so not to the next round. But anyway, hopefully this gets you started at least. Look at online, read my notes. I have lots of notes on perfect competition. Please read them, bring them in here with you, and we'll see you on Thursday. Okay? Have a good day.